Liboros, thank you so much for joining us. Give us an understanding. The provision of Section 305, I did say historically speaking, it's been a while now since the government of Goodluck Jonathan. That was the last time that we saw a declaration of state of emergency in any part of the country. 3 states, we saw the declaration of state of emergency due to security situation. But the president has also alluded that the political tension is leading to security situation in Rivers State, leading him to declare a state of emergency. Legally speaking, what's the president right?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for the opportunity. And then let's quickly cast our mind back when the president was in opposition. I agree that once there are challenges, the president has the power by virtue of Section 305. And if you also look at Section 11 of the Constitution, the National Assembly can make, laws for public order and public security for any state. But when the president was in opposition, when the state of emergency was declared, and you talked about was declared, let us cast our mind back to the position of the APC there, ACN. Their position was that when a state of emergency is declared, that the president has no power to remove a sitting governor from office. That there is nothing in the Constitution that requires the sitting governor to vacate his office. Yes, a state of emergency can be declared for the federal government to take charge of security situations, and then movement in certain cases are restricted. But there is nothing in the Constitution that says that a sitting governor or the sitting House of Assembly can be sacked. If you look at Section 11, let's start from Section 11. It says the National Assembly may make law for the Federation, any part thereof, with respect to the maintenance and securing of public safety. But specifically, subsection 4 of Section 11 says anytime when the it says anytime when any House of Assembly of a state is unable to perform its function by reason of the situation prevailing in that state, the National Assembly may make such law for the peace, order, and good governance of the state with respect to matters in which a state House of Assembly may make law as may appear to the National Assembly to be necessary or expedient within such time as the House of Assembly is able to resume its function. That's where I want to start us from. If you look at that section, can we say after the Supreme Court judgment that the State House of Assembly has not been able to make law for the state? The answer is no. The House of Assembly had issued directive, for certain persons to appear before them, had even requested the governor to present budget before him, and the governor also had applied to present budget before the State House of Assembly. That's on one side. Then if you now go to the section relied on by the president, which is Section 309 in this instance, very copiously gives the president the power to declare a state of emergency in a situation where the governor has refused or failed to call on the president to declare such a state of emergency. If the federation is in imminent danger of invasion or involvement in a state of war, there's actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof to such extent as to require extraordinary measure to restore peace and security. There's a clear and present danger of an actual breakdown of public order and public safety in the federation or any part thereof. There's occurrence of imminent danger or occurrence of any disaster or natural calamity. There's any other public danger which can constitute a threat to the coexistence of the federation. And if you go to subsection 4, it says the governor may, with the sanction or a resolution by 2/3 majority of the House of Assembly. So that means the House of Assembly, as at that time, must still be sitting, or can probably be sitting. But in any case, if you look at subsection 5, the president may issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in any case to which the provision of subsection 4 of this section apply, unless the governor of the state fails to, within reasonable time, to make a request to the president to issue a state of proclamation. So in that case, even when the governor is making a request, the governor will not be making a request so that the president will declare a state of emergency and sack the governor and then sack the State House of Assembly. That was the argument of the APC when they were in opposition.
So now let me quickly believe. Yeah, let me jump in quickly, Mr. Osoma. The president didn't use the word sack or removal. He used the word suspended. And if you look at the earlier statement made by the president, he said, he made a position of the Supreme Court. And the position of the Supreme Court, according to the president, which he quoted in his statement, he said, quote, a government cannot be said to exist without one of the three arms that make up the government of a state under the 1999 Constitution as amended. In this case, the head of the executive arm of the government has chosen to collapse the legislature to enable him to govern without a legislature as a despot. As it is, there is no government in Rivers State. And the president also alluded to the position of the court, which also posits that there might be, because of the proposed or the alleged defection of the 27 lawmakers, that the validity of their position as lawmakers is invalid, or their position as lawmakers is invalidated by the alleged defection. So the president is saying that there are legal encumbrances in the positions of the executive and the legislature.
No. So the president is not the court. All of those encumbrances that the president raised, valid as they are, had been taken care of by the Supreme Court judgment. The Supreme Court judgment had nullified all of those actions taken by the governor of Rivers State, Similaye Fubara. And so, to that extent, since the Supreme Court had taken those steps and invalidated those actions, if Fubara had said that he does not recognize the Supreme Court judgment, then that's when you will now say, despite the Supreme Court judgment, the governor was still going ahead to create that scenario described by the court. The governor has accepted that. And so, all of that had been cured by the Supreme Court judgment, and the State House of Assembly had subsequently sat to issue notices to parties and issue notices to the governor.
Let's say, Mr. Oshoma, let's say on the provisions upon which the president acted tonight. He acted on the provision of Section 305, subsection 5, which empowers him. Now, the question is that you are saying that the president does not have the power to suspend the governor and the deputy governor. Is that right?
So there's nothing in this section that says that once a state of emergency is declared, and that was the president's position when he was in opposition.
Procedurally, Mr. Oshoma, just a moment. Procedurally, if there is a declaration by the president and a state of emergency in a state, what would follow procedurally?
First and foremost, when there is a declaration of a state of emergency in a state, that means there is crisis in that state. What should follow? Because we operate a federation, the state laws usually govern that state. It is the State House of Assembly that makes laws. And so, for any federal agency to make incursion into such a state, there must be a state of emergency for the federal government to make incursion into that state. And then, but in this case, and not to suspend elected government official. That's what I'm saying. That so state of emergency is okay to be declared for the federal government to collaborate with the state institution. And in some cases, when state of emergency is declared, some rights are limited. For example, the freedom of movement can no longer be absolute because there is imminent danger or threat to danger. But there is, if the Constitution wanted the governor and the State House of Assembly to be suspended, certainly the Constitution would have spelled it. The Constitution did not provide Section 305, subsection 5, did not say an administrator shall be appointed for such a state. That is my position.
So, let's look at it, Mr. Oshoma. It is not explicit in the Section 305 of the what happens when the president declares a state of emergency. In some other situation that we have seen historically in Nigeria and legally speaking, under the provisions of the Constitution, is such a case where state government approach the federal government to say, come and declare a state of emergency. In that case, it is natural what could happen. Look at the literal and the English meaning of state of emergency. And I'm going to read it. It means that where there is a danger or disaster in which government suspends normal constitutional procedures in order to regain control. So there will be the question, in a case where there is a political crisis involving the governor, leading to crisis that is tending to security threat in the state, what would you do? Would you leave one party and ignore the other party? Because in this case, you are alluding to the fact that the president should have left the status quo, leave the governor, leave the deputy governor. What will happen with the weakest side of the divide?
What is required is to leave the democratically elected government and deal with the security challenges in the states. it is not the security challenges. You can say they are fallout of the crisis between the executive and the legislature in the state. But there are security threats, imminent security threats, and there might be impediments. There might be state laws that are impeding the application of federal authority in that state. When a state of emergency is declared, it is those application of state laws that are usually suspended, and not the democratically elected government officials like the State House of Assembly and the state governor. And that is why I have said that if you look at section 4, subsection 4 of section 305, in some cases, it is the governor that can even invite. It is the governor that can even invite the president to declare a state of emergency, where the powers, where the challenges, the danger is beyond the powers of the state. Does a governor invite the president to come and sack him from office? The answer is no. Secondly, if you look at subsection 5, where the president declare and the governor has failed to reach out to the president to declare, it is not stated there that a sole administrator shall be appointed in a democratic setting. That's basically what I'm saying. You deal with the security challenges, the security issues, confronting that area, and then restore normalcy to the area instead of sacking an entire democratic.
So let's look at it, Mr. Oshoma. Legally speaking, what does this mean in terms of the running of affairs? And mind you, section 305 subsection 6C says that the president said it's for initial 6 months. But the subsection 6C provides that the presidency has a power to extend by another 6 months if the situation remains.
But before then, the state of emergency is not absolute. If you look at subsection 6, paragraph B, if it affects the federation or any part thereof, and within 2 days, when the National Assembly is in session, or within 10 days when the National Assembly is not in session, after a publication, there is no resolution supported by 2/3 of the members of the National Assembly, National Assembly approving the proclamation. So if within 10 days, when the National Assembly is not in session, or within 2 days, when they are in session, the National Assembly fails to, support this resolution by 2/3 majority, automatically the state of emergency is vacated. It is when the National Assembly adopts and supports it, that's when it can last for 6 months and then subject to another extension.
So now,
what I am saying, you remember the debate when Goodluck Jonathan declared state of emergency in 3 states. Let's go back to that debate. What was the debate? Because then PDP was in government, APC was in opposition. What was the position of APC? That governors should, and the House of Assembly cannot be sacked. That is not stated in the Constitution. So why are they doing it differently this time?
Now, in part, you think that there is a breach. And your position is that there is a breach by what the president said. This has been gazetted, mind you, so it's become law and is imposed on that state. It comes into effect. Now, it then means that Vice Admiral Ibas is going to take charge of the state. Is going to be, in some way, going to be the legislature and the executive, because there is no legislative arm of government in the state. If there is any law to be made, it is taken to the federal, to the National Assembly. The FEC also can make some policy for the state. Those are the provisions as stated by the president, which I think also will be captured in the Gazette that the president has mentioned. But going forward from here, what do you think are the options available to Governor Siminalayi Fubara? Because he's now going to be on the receiving end, isn't it?
Yeah, I had said consistently, on a sober moment now, I've said consistently that, yes, I agree that Fubara committed impeachable offenses, and it was left for the State House of Assembly to deal with. And the impeachment, going ahead to impeachment for me, was a too sudden a blow. And I also had expected Siminalayi Fubara, with all due respect to him, to reach out to his estranged godfather, Wike. Only 2 of them could sit down and resolve all of these issues. But the drums of war that the supporters of both Fubara and Wike were beating, the drums have not even started and the state of emergency is already declared. And democratically elected institutions are suspended. It is not for the betterment of Rivers State, really. I expected that maturity should have been allowed to play in this game, and both parties would sit down, look themselves eyeball to eyeball, and then shape their grievances for the betterment of the state. But this high-handedness on the part of both sides, did it help matters, and it will not help matters, no matter how they want to look at it.
Liberals Oshoma, thank you so much indeed for your legal analysis on this matter. The reference back to Section 11, which talks about the role of the National Assembly, and of course the substantive section that the President relied on, Section 305, subsection 5, and if anything